Welcome back to MDL Crochet. The stitch we're going to learn today is a variation of one of the base fives, which is the full stitch. The stitch we're going to learn today goes by two names. It could go by the full stitch cluster or the cluster full stitch, but that's what it looks like. It's multiple full stitches in each opening. It's an easy stitch to do, but with all that said, let's get to it. Alright, so for this stitch, your chain has to be in even numbers. For this chain, I chained 20. And with Tunisian, you need to pick up your loops in the back unless the pattern specifies or the stitch specifies different. So how we do that is this counts as your first loop, which is coming out of this chain. So what you do is you just flip your work over, and you can see all the bumps all the way down the back. Well, that's where you're going to be pulling up your chains. So you go, don't count this one, go to the very next one, flip it over, and you can see the bumps, and just start working your needle under those bumps, and then you pull up a loop. Now for this purpose demonstration, I am using a 6mm hook and 4-weight yarn, and I'm using two different colors so you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up these loops, and I'll see you at the end. Alright, I'm pulling up the last one now. And it never hurts to always count. Count to make sure you're still on point. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So what we're going to do here, it's a standard return pass. So you'll chain 1, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, repeating that process all the way down to the end until you only have one loop left on your hook. Alright, I'm pulling through the last loops now. So what we're going to do is something a little different than we've ever done before. This stitch, again, as I said, has two different names. It can go by the full stitch cluster or the cluster full stitch. I think the cluster full stitch rolls off the tongue a lot easier. So what we do is you keep this loop up, and you see that first bar? We're not going into it. You're going into the second bar here. You're going to pull up your loop, yarn over, go back into that bar, and pull up another loop. So you're technically pulling up 3 loops per bar. So you skip one, go into the next one, pull up a loop, yarn over, go back into it, pull up a loop, and there you are. And you're going to do that all the way down. Skip in one, go into one, pull up a loop, yarn over, go back into it, and pull up another loop. And again, skip, go into that loop, pull up a loop, yarn over, go back into that bar, and pull up another loop. Skip, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, go back into the bar, and pull up a loop. Skip, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, go back into that bar and pull up a loop. Skipping, and you're going into that bar, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull up another loop. Skipping, going into that bar, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, go back into the bar, and pull up a loop. Skipping, going in, because we have 1, 2 here, 2 left, and then the side. So you're skipping, and you're going into the last one, pull up your loop, yarn over, go back into it, yarn over and pull up a loop. And then the end is just your normal. Go into it, pull up your loop, and that is it. So let's count how many clusters we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 clusters. That is the number you need. How many clusters you have is a number you need to pay attention to. All right, so you're going to yarn over, chain 1, yarn over, and you're going to go in through this entire cluster. Just go through, just like that. Chain 1, yarn over, go through the entire next cluster. Chain 1. After every cluster, you're chaining 1. Yarn over and go through the next. Being sure not to split your yarn. There we go. Chain 1. Yarn over. Go all the way through the cluster. Chain 1. Yarn over and go all the way through the cluster. Chain 1. Yarn over. Go all the way through the cluster. Chain 1. Yarn over and pull through all the entire cluster. Chain 1. Yarn over. Go through the entire cluster. Chain 1. Chain 1 and go through all the entire cluster. Chain 1. Now stop right here because we're changing colors. So we're changing colors. And I'm just going to go against my better judgment, but I'm just going to put it in here. Just like that. And you're going to use that color as your next row. So how the next row is going to work. Now, we have 1. So how this works. Okay, so we have 9 gaps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're not counting this one because it's very snug. Plus, this is mimicking the full stitch, so we kind of have to play with the full stitch. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in this between this first cluster and the sidebar, and you're going to pull up your loop, then you're going to yarn over and pull up your loop again. Now you're going to skip to the next space, yarn over, pull up that loop, yarn over, and pull up another loop. So each one you're still pulling, you're pulling up a loop, yarning over, and pulling up a loop. So let's go to the next gap. Pull up your loop, yarn over, go back in, and pull up another loop. You're treating this just like the full stitch. Pull up a loop, yarn over, pull up another loop. Same with the next spot, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go back in and pull up another loop. And this is all it is. But you have to be wary about and cautious about your offsets, because it does the offsets just like a full stitch does. So you just go in the gap, yarn over, pull up their loop, yarn over, go back in, pull up another loop. And that is it. Now we're at the end. So you have this last one to do. Just pull up your loop, yarn over, go back in, and pull up your loop. And this is how you handle it. You just go straight to the end, because you should have your 9 clusters on your hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now you pulled up your loop, so you're going to yarn over, chain 1, yarn over, go through the entire clusters. The entire first cluster, chain 1 in between clusters, and yarn over and go back through the next cluster, the entire cluster. Just like that, chain 1. And we're going to go through this entire cluster right here. If I can get through it. There we go. And then yarn over, chain 1, next cluster. There we are, chain 1, yarn over, and go through the next cluster. That's the return pass for this entire stitch. Just be sure you watch your yarn, that way you're not going to split it and pull it out. And next thing you know, you got a hot mess everywhere. Because that's all we don't want, is a hot mess. So chain 1 and pull all the way back through. Chain 1 all the way through that cluster, but not through the end stitch. Chain 1, and then you pick up your other color. And you can be careful however you want to do this so your yarn doesn't get tangled. And tighten that down a little bit. So that's what it's going to look like. We're going to do a few more rows. And you'll be able to see where you need to start, because these are going to be your guides, right? Your old ones. Especially if you're doing it in 2 colors, you're going to be able to see not the row you just did, but the row below. So like here, if I can grab the right color, I know I need to go in here. There's 1, and there you are. So go into the next spot, yarn over, and then you just go through the gaps, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over before you go back in and pull up another loop. Same thing again, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over before you go back in and pull up another loop. That is how simple this stitch really is. I think it's one of the more simplest ones. It just sounds complicated and kind of looks complicated when you get it done because of all of this that's on here. But it's really not. So again, go into the gap, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, go back into the gap, and pull up another loop. And if you're ever lost, count your clusters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8, tells me I need to go into this gap, right? So let's go into it. So you put your needle in, just like this. Just go into the gap, yarn over, and pull up your loop. Yarn over before you go back in, and then go back in. And then just grab your yarn and pull up another loop. And then your normal end stitch. And then chain 1, just on that last stitch, because you're just building up for your return pass. Now yarn over and you go through the entire cluster that's next to it. Chain 1, yarn over and go through the next entire cluster. Chain 1, yarn over and go through the next entire cluster. Chain 1, go through the next entire cluster. Chain 1, yarn over, go through the next entire cluster. And even after every cluster, you need to chain 1. So we're chaining one here and we're dropping and we're picking up our other color to finish the pull through. And that's how simple this is. Now we already know, because this color's here, get that tail out of the way, that's where we need to go. It's telling us where we need to go. So we need to go here. So let's go in there. Yarn over, or put your needle in the gap. Yarn over, pull up a loop. Yarn over, go back through, pull up another loop. Make sure that's nice and tightened. And then you go down to the next gap. Yarn over, pull up a loop. Yarn over, go back in, pull up another loop. Put your needle through the loop, yarn over, pull up, yarn over, go back in and pull up another loop. Next gap, insert your needle, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, go back into the gap and pull up another loop. And this is just exactly how we would be pulling up loops in the full stitch if we just left one on. However, we're doing a cluster, so you need to yarn over, go back in and pull up another stitch. And that is it. I'm going to finish this row off, and then I'm going to do a few more off camera, and then we'll come back and chit chat about this stitch. Alright, so I finished up my last row, and to close this off, it's a different type of close off. You can do a full stitch close off in the first gap, and then you're going to do 2 together and a Tunisian slip stitch close off, full stitch close off, and then a Tunisian slip stitch 2 together, close off, full stitch close off, Tunisian slip stitch 2 together, close off. And that is how you're going to close this project off. Or you can do a border all the way around, but it is up to you how you want to close this off. I'm going to go ahead and finish up closing it off. Now we're at the end, so we're going to go ahead and just drop down, do our end stitch, pull up our loop, work it off, chain 1, and go ahead and you can snip your yarns. And that's what this stitch looks like. It's a because it's a full stitch, it's going to have, or a variation of the full stitch, it's going to have a lot of stretch. Not much horizontal, but a lot of vertical stretch. And that's what the back looks like. Totally different. Almost looks like building blocks in a way. But that's the front. And it is a nice squishy fabric. But that is the cluster full stitch. But that is it. And remember, folks, if you can give me a like and subscribe, that'd be greatly appreciated. And leave me a comment. I'll be more than happy to chit chat with you. And as always, folks, keep stitching.